What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. We're coming off our best week ever, of course, and the only week that I'm not around to make the video. 11-1 overall, including multiple 4 and 5 pick hits. We will try to continue our hot streak. We are 62.5% on picks since week 5. First up, Jauan Jennings. We've been tackling him a lot recently. I feel like maybe the public thinks this production is a little bit more fluky than it is, but we're going to take higher on 53.5 yards from him, 53.5 receiving yards. With Ayuk done for the season, he's been the best wide receiver on the 49ers, leads them in average separation score, win rate. Even if you include Brandon Ayuk's stats, he is first in first read percentage. That is massively important on the 49ers specifically, because we know that Shanahan designs every play to get a specific player the ball. Now, it doesn't mean they always will, but every play is designed for someone. So if Jauan Jennings is the one getting these first reads, we know he's the one that they're centering the offense around. Of course, Christian McCaffrey is actually going to lead this team in touches. He's the most important player on offense. But when we're looking specifically at the passing attack, Shanahan is designing plays for Jauan Jennings, and it makes sense because he's winning at the best rate among all of these wide receivers. So while the matchup is objectively bad for San Fran wide receivers, Jauan is going to get schemed up usage. He's been fantastic this season, and so I'm expecting him to continue posting elite numbers. 53.5 receiving yards is simply too low of a projection for Underdog. Take higher on that. I also really like Kendrick Bourne, higher than just 22.5 receiving yards, so doesn't need to do a whole lot to hit higher there. Before last week's game, the Patriots talked about how they've kind of found a wide receiver rotation that they want to stick with, and that we were going to see that play out last week. What do we see happen? Kayshon Boutte, 45 routes run, Douglas, 29, Bourne, 23, Polk, 15, and Baker, 5. Kind of what we anticipated going into the game. What does Polk do on his 15 routes? He does what he always does, which is absolutely nothing. Bourne, meanwhile, turned 23 routes into 5 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. After the game, Mayo has talked very positively about Kendrick Bourne in the days after. Polk, only thing he's been talking about with him is how he cost him a touchdown on the false start. It's pretty clear that they obviously want Polk to be in their long-term plans. And I think he's still going to get run because they want to develop him, because he clearly needs more time to develop. But I also feel like Bourne is just getting healthier every week coming off the torn ACL. Because remember, before the torn ACL, he was their best wide receiver. He was playing fantastic. Tears ACL, finally comes back this season, and he's been playing pretty good. I feel like he's just earning more snaps. He's getting more healthy. He's just outplaying Polk by so much that it's going to be difficult for them to go to Polk more. So I think he's going to lose a few more routes. I think those routes are, of course, going to go to Kendrick Bourne. At 22.5, he needs what? 2 receptions. Now, another poor matchup. Miami's not a good matchup for wide receivers, but they're a really bad matchup for slot wide receivers, only slightly below average to outside wide receivers. So it's not a huge problem for Kendrick Bourne, who plays on the outside 77% of the time. I also like Bucky Irving, higher than 49.5 rushing yards. The Bucs are 6-point road favorites this week against a Giants team that's given up the 4th most rushing yards per game, by far the most rushing yards per play, the 4th most carries of 10 or more yards, the 2nd highest rushing efficiency if you look in terms of EPA per rush allowed, the most rushing yards before contact per carry, and by far the most rushing yards over expectation per carry. Opponents are averaging 2.3 yards before contact per carry against the Giants. That is awful news against Bucky Irving, who's second among all players in the NFL with 3.9 yards after contact per carry. So he should have extreme efficiency in this one. And if the line holds, Tampa Bay is actually up late, then volume should be there as well. The Bucs have lost 4 straight games, so we haven't really seen huge spikes in rushing volume because, again, winning teams run the ball more. If they're actually up by close to a touchdown, potentially more than a touchdown late in this game, we should see volume increase as well. And so if you increase the volume, increase the efficiency as well, makes the projection look really nice for Bucky Irving. Another rookie I really like is Odunze. I know, shocker. I've looked back because I feel like we talk about Odunze so much. I've looked back. We've taken his higher 5 times. We're 4-1 in doing that. But we're also going to do this time is we're going to add in Odunze Swift lower on his rushing here. So higher on 41.5 receiving yards for Odunze, lower than 59.5 rushing yards for Odunze Swift. According to my data, the Vikings are the 5th worst matchup for running back yards per carry. They're the worst matchup for overall running back rush attempts and the 2nd worst matchup for running back rushing yards. And that should all make sense to us. Like, the Vikings are 5th in stuff rate. They've allowed by far the lowest EPA per rush attempt. Unless you're a terrible offensive coordinator, you're not even going to really try running the ball against this team. Like, you have to run it sometimes. You can't have a 100% pass rate, but you're not going to run the ball very often because no matter how good you are, you're probably not going to have a very good day against them. So what do teams opt to do? They opt to throw it to wide receivers. The Vikings are facing the highest opponent pass play rate in the league, allowing the 13th most schedule adjusted running back receptions, 11th most schedule adjusted tight end targets, and the 3rd most schedule adjusted wide receiver targets. In their first game with the new offensive coordinator last week, Caleb Williams looked a lot more comfortable. Odunze had 10 targets, which was his 2nd highest mark on the season. And it's also worth noting that leading up to their week 7 bye, Odunze only had an 18% first read percentage. In the 4 weeks since then, he's up to a 27% first read percentage, including 30% last week. So it's a great spot for Odunze. His volume is increasing. The new offensive coordinator seems to be helping. And it's, of course, just a good spot for wide receiver volume in general. And, of course, an awful spot for Odunze Swift. Just 3 running backs through 10 weeks have hit 51 rushing yards against the Vikings. 2 of them needed at least 20 carries to do so, which is something that Swift has only done once this season in a 25-point win. So Swift is going to need to be efficient in a matchup that forces bottom 3 efficiency, no matter how you look at it, for running back. I also like Tucker Kraft, lower than 3.5 receptions. The Packers take on a 49ers defense that ranks 4th best at limiting tight end targets, 5th best at limiting tight end catch percentage, and then best at limiting tight end yards per reception. Couple that with the Packers having 4 healthy wide receivers right now, and you could pretty easily see Kraft falling short of this projection. Through 10 games so far, Kraft only has 3 with 4 or more receptions. In 2 of those games, Christian Watson either didn't play or was super limited, left early after I believe it was 12 snaps. And then in the other one, they got crushed by the Lions. So he got to 4 receptions, but it was on 39 pass attempts for Jordan Love. So in a poor matchup with all the wide receivers healthy, he could certainly hit. He could certainly get to 4 or 5 receptions, but that'll happen much less than 50% of the time. Our final picks are going to go back to what worked last week. I'm attacking this Ravens at Chargers game on Monday night. Give me higher than 253.5 passing yards for Justin Herbert, 68.5 receiving yards for Ladd McConkey, 57.5 receiving yards for Zay Flowers. And then Quentin Johnston, Underdog has not yet posted a projection for him. I checked over at DK. It's a 46.5, pretty much what you'd expect. I would imagine Underdog comes in around the mid to upper 40s for their projection. Assuming they do that and it's not something crazy, I like hiring him as well. The Ravens are allowing the most passing yards per game in the NFL, and the Chargers have gone from the 2nd most run-heavy team over the first 6 weeks of the season to the 6th most pass-heavy team over the 5 weeks since then. They're going to drop back a ton this week, and so I'm good boosting Herbert up to 300 passing yards, Quentin maybe to like 60 or so, and I like having Flowers on the other side just because he's super volatile, but he does hit a lot of the time that Baltimore needs to air the ball out. If I think that the Chargers are going to have success through the air, then it just makes sense to add on Flowers. And it also makes sense to kind of go all in on Flowers when you do so. Through 11 games this season, Zay Flowers has lower than 40 receiving yards 6 times and higher than 90 receiving yards 5 times. That is 0 games between 40 and 90 receiving yards. So when he's hitting all the way. They're featuring him a lot. They're throwing the ball a lot, and he's being productive. So if he misses, it's on the low end. And if he misses, let's be honest, this kind of all correlates together. So it's likely other pieces will miss as well. But if he hits, and if we run into a spot where he's doing really well, they're moving the ball through the air, which is highly efficient, more efficient than running. Well, it puts the Chargers back on the field. And if we think the Chargers are doing really well, they're throwing the ball a lot, they're scoring with efficiency, well, then it goes back to Flowers on the other side. So it correlates really nicely together. And I think it just makes sense to boost the ones I talked about. Boost Flowers, Quentin, and Herbert. And Quentin over Ladd, just because if Quentin hits, he's the most likely receiver to hit for like 40, 50 yards downfield, and that just correlates so much better than Ladd consistently hitting for like, even if it's 12 to 15 yard gains, it's just less likely Ladd's going to hit for a really, really long play. And so you can take his normal higher, but I would boost up Quentin, boost up Herbert, and boost up Flowers. So once Underdog actually posts a projection for Quentin Johnston, I'll tweet this out. It'll be the promo where I give away $250 to someone if it hits, but it'll be Justin Herbert, higher than 299.5 passing yards. Ladd McConkey, higher than 68.5 receiving yards. Quentin Johnston, higher than 59.5 receiving yards. And then Zay Flowers, higher than 89.5 receiving yards. It should be, again, I can't take it yet, but doing out the math, it should be roughly 25 to 30x if all 4 hit. But if you want to play it safer, use insurance. It's around 15 to 17x if 4 of them hit, and then still around 4 to 5x if only 3 of the 4 hit. So I've got maybe 10 to 12 more picks on my website. Check that out if you want, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But good luck to everyone this weekend, not only for Underdog, but also for your fantasy matchups. Make sure you're following me on Twitter so you don't miss out on the promo, and I'll see you all on Monday for the Week 13 waiver wire video.